Today is a very good day. I spent most of my night pretending to be a pirate, a good one at that I might add, and now I get to talk about Sea of Thieves. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time, pretty much ever since I was invited into the game's alpha test through the Xbox Insider program, which was a lot of fun. I've always enjoyed seeing games come along from early development to full release, and to be honest, Rare treated the alpha testing phase for this game like a real QA experience. Each test was isolated and kind of curated. Servers would go live for just a few days on the weekend usually. The team would make it very clear what they've added or changed so we could give more accurate feedback on the systems that were most crucial at that point in development. They seem to be doing something similar here with the game's closed beta, which I think takes a lot of people by surprise for better or for worse. These days, betas are really just demos for games that are already finished. A lot of the time you'll see a report like the day after the beta go live, game goes gold, and they're already like printing copies of it. That usually means that those games, those betas, have a lot of content. So regardless of how far along Sea of Thieves is, the team at Rare has instead, I think, decided to focus on a few specific components for the sake of the beta. They've got server-loaded matchmaking, obviously something that's very important, and they're currently showcasing the game's reward loop that revolves around voyages. So voyages have you searching for buried treasure, essentially via maps, which are given to you via the game's factions like the Gold Hoarders. As you complete these voyages, you'll not only earn gold, but you'll increase your reputation with those factions, which will then give you access to longer voyages that will have you at sea longer, often traveling to multiple islands, and even solving riddles or puzzles to unlock more clues to eventually lead you to that treasure. Now, if you manage to bring any of these treasures back, you can turn them in for gold, which you can then use to purchase items like clothing, lanterns. There's even a blunderbuss in the beta. It all felt like just a very small chunk of what could be the full experience. And as someone who participated in the game's alpha, I could sit here and say, well, all this stuff was in alpha. Don't worry, guys, it'll be in full release. But I'm not going to do that because that would be stupid and that would be lying because I have no idea what Rare's plans are. I'm not going to speak on their behalf. We'll really just have to wait and see what the full game contains. Wait for the reviews before you drop the money, ladies and gentlemen, and don't pre-order all that goodness. But if there is one thing I can tell you right here, right now, it's that if you have any concerns about the content richness of Sea of Thieves, the game probably isn't for you and it's probably not quite what you thought it was. So let's take the time during this video to make it very clear just what this game is and what it isn't, starting with the isn't. This isn't going to be your replacement for Destiny or The Division or whatever other MMO-style persistent world experience you might be playing. Yes, Sea of Thieves has a persistent world, but it doesn't exist so you can put 6 hours a day in for a month straight and not become bored. This isn't a game looking to keep its players hooked with a horde of progression and reward loops. It's kind of old school in its design, in that it's all about the player experience as they go from point A to point B, rather than just chasing whatever reward awaits at the end of the journey, at the end of the rainbow, after you get to point B. The persistent world of Sea of Thieves is actually there to breathe a bit of extra life into what I think is already a stunning piece of world design, and we should definitely talk about that because the water, the waves, the weather, the overall audiovisual presentation of this game is simply breathtaking. The way your ship creaks as the wind catches the sails just right, not only acting as a visual and audio cue for when your sails are properly placed into the wind, but then propelling you across the ocean in the dead of night. It's a genuinely beautiful place to be and to just spend time in, especially with friends, but even solo. That persistence, though, it's there, so every now and then while you're enjoying all of that, maybe as you're headed home to cash in on all that fat loot, you spot another ship on the horizon. "It's a galleon class," your first mate shouts from the crow's nest. "Load the cannons, prepare for battle." And maybe you head into battle, or maybe you just steer clear and make it home safe and sound to enjoy all that plunder in a nice big glass of grog. It's really just an extra layer of, oh shit, look, the world's kind of alive. It's not there to act as this sort of like hardcore endgame persistent type environment, and it's not there to give you this excessively fleshed out PvP experience. There's really no like die-hard dedicated progression system for killing other players or destroying their ships. In fact, right now in the closed beta, all of it's very kind of just there. Like ships just can respawn, players can just transport to their ships and just get another ship. There's not a whole lot of like loss or risk in that sort of an environment. All of the risk currently revolves around just losing any loot you might have had, and that's really where they've kept it at for the beta. So yeah, you could boot up the full game perhaps, and maybe there'll be more there, and maybe you'll just spend some time with your friends hunting down other ships. You can totally do that, but just know that your only real satisfaction is going to come from either just watching their ship sink as you sail off into the horizon, sneaking on board, stealing their loot, or just getting in a really long, drawn-out battle where both of you end up dead in the middle of the ocean. It's just not, again, tied into any sort of a hard progression or reward loop. That's just really not how this game functions. And once again, we come back to that idea that Sea of Thieves is all about the player experience. It's a sandbox filled with tools to create memories, stories, and moments of true fun. It has more in common with Minecraft than it will ever have with a game like Destiny or The Division. Get drunk. Stumble down the dock so you can lose your lunch on the deck of your ship. Play some music as you sail into the abyss. Fire yourself from a cannon for 100 different reasons, or just get to grips with properly sailing a ship across the high seas. The quality of your experience here is going to rely almost entirely on what you make of it, the fun you create with the tools you've been given, and just how much you enjoy sailing the open seas. This is, after all, a game about being a pirate. And the game does give you a lot of fun little nuanced ways to embrace that lifestyle, to roleplay as a pirate. There's bells on your ship you can ring and shout land ho. You'll constantly be reloading the cannons of your ship, eating bananas for health, and plugging up holes in the side of the ship so it doesn't sink. Sailing, while we're on the subject, is actually surprisingly serene and quite a satisfying experience. I think Rare managed to keep it simple enough so that people could learn it, but there's also a lot of little layers of depth there, especially with how the weather, the wind, and the water can all affect the ship's movement, and how you have to compensate for those things to go where you want to go, as fast as you want to go, and of course eventually slow down. Even as a solo player, I've spent just dozens of hours now across the game's alpha and beta just sailing. You know, I see a storm in the distance. Hey, let's go check that out. Wow, those are some big waves. Oh man, I'm probably gonna die here. It's just a good time, right? And when you actually get onto a galleon with a full crew, all of a sudden it's a completely different beast. Now you've got 3 sails to worry about. You've got multiple decks that the ship could have holes in if something happens. You're gonna have a hell of a time communicating and learning how to best catch, you know, that next eastward wind to get up to speed, or how to set the sails and actually come to a stop when and where you want to. And if you get really spicy, as we learned last night, even how to pull an anchor drop e-brake turn in the middle of the ocean during a 45-minute ship battle that resulted in nearly everyone's death, but definitely one hell of a good time. I really have no idea what Rare plans on doing for the full release. How many of the systems they're going to bring back from the alpha into the full release, how much of the game just simply isn't being presented here. But honestly, even if and when all of those systems come to the game's full release, this still isn't going to be a game that's as mechanically deep or as grindy as I think many people want it to be or expected it to be. I just want people to clearly understand what's being presented here so they're not disappointed, because I do think there is a fantastic experience. There's a lot to love here, but it's just not that type of game. It's not that type of persistent world. It doesn't want to be. I don't think it ever planned to be, and I don't think it needs to be. I've now put in 8 hours just with the beta, heading out on the high seas with, obviously limited content, and I had an extremely memorable time. This for me is a game that is just packed with charm that never lets up. And in a sea full of games looking to create as many meaningless ways as possible to keep me playing hundreds of hours later, I'm ready to take a break and take a leap for a game that wants me to have, make, and stumble into my own fun every step of the way, even when I don't make it all the way.